And ultimately, I think what Marvel has done is they have taken the high road and they've really listened to the audience and the fans, and there's been a lot of kind of creative synergy.
Nerderotic.com.
I know everything looks like sunshine and rainbows over at the MCU, but it really isn't. A lot of fans are starting to recognize what is going on and asking Marvel, what the hell are you doing? Considering recent news that we have just received, female Thor having to clear up some confusion with the fans, Black Widow needing a man after all, and those ridiculous XMen rumors, all deserving of their own individual videos, but I'm going to wrap them up in a big Marvel smorgasbord wrapped around female Thor. And that sounded better in my head. But before we get started, if you like what I do here, please consider subscribing to the channel. YouTube has recently changed the algorithm and my videos don't get the traction they once did past 24 hours. So I rely on you now more than ever to please like and share the videos as much as possible and get the word out. And this would also help your favorite YouTuber because I'm not the only one it's happening to. I would appreciate it. They would appreciate it. Now on to the video. Again, female Thor is back in the news. And I just love saying female Thor because it triggers so many people. Because they needed to clarify that Natalie Portman's Jane Foster is not the star of the movie. It is indeed Chris Hemsworth. He is the star of Thor, which makes sense because he is Thor. Now it looks like they might be dialing this back just a little bit, and I can understand why people were confused. You guys work hard, you're living your lives, you don't have time to sift through the weeds and see all the propaganda that Disney and Marvel and Lucasfilm are putting into their films, trying to be a political platform. You don't have time to see all the virtue signaling. And when you compound it to just with the recent news we've gotten from Marvel, you'll see what the common element is. It's the access media, the media that has forgotten completely about you, the fan, and only cares about getting retweets and have turned into a bunch of star effers, quite frankly, for lack of a better term. And well, that's why they don't get paid very much anymore. That's why they're fighting for their lives to get clicks. And that's why they have created the current environment we have in Hollywood. They are almost solely responsible. Now, part of the problem is there's too many damn people in the access media, and they're really not getting traction anymore. They're losing it to YouTubers, and that's why they talk about us so much. We talk about them so much because of their hypocrisy. But this article is just filled with fluff. The first sentence is the only thing you really need to know. Chris Hemsworth's Thor will still be the star of Thor: Love and Thunder. The fact that that's still confusing, I find a bit laughable, but it's true, because the image everybody remembers is Taika Waititi getting on his knee and handing Mjolnir to Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman, who has zero star power, whose last girl power sci-fi movie couldn't find a home internationally and flopped at the domestic box office. That Natalie Portman. In an interview with MTV News, is that still around? Waititi confirmed that Hemsworth, Thor, will be the star of Thor: Love and Thunder. Again, if you have to say that this late in the game, a lot of people are confused, and I'm not surprised because all of these groundbreaking films that just keep gender and race swapping characters has become an assumption now. So people just assumed that she was taking over for Chris Hemsworth. Now, Marvel might have been a little horrified about that because they do actually want people to come and see the movie. When asked if Portman or Hemsworth was the star of Love and Thunder, Waititi replied, "It's Chris. It's a Thor film. He is Thor. It's a Thor film. She's in it." Oh, so she's just in it now. Well, then why is she called Thor? And why did Disney Marvel bypass decades of Thor lore to get to a Jason Aaron storyline from the comics that just came out a few years ago? The answer is simple and obvious. It is to virtue signal. It is problematic to have a white male lead in a film these days, so that white male lead usually has to be led around by a vastly superior and infallible woman, like in Iron Fist Season 2, like in Westworld Season 2, like in Solo, like in so many other films and TV shows we have been watching in the last couple years. Again, this is nothing new, and this will happen whenever this film comes out, unless they decide to back off and change their mind. But we know that's not going to happen because Disney Marvel is overcorrecting and in turn playing the Access Media, who is originally playing them. Some of the criticisms we got from the MCU was it was too white. There's not enough female leads. Where are the gay characters? And that really did stick in Disney's head. But now they're using it to their advantage and they just race swap and gender swap to get a bunch of free publicity. Now, the Access Media originally started asking all these questions, not that they care about these things, is they felt it had some kind of power. They had some kind of power over Disney. And that's why we're in this sick symbiotic relationship where they are just trying to out inclusivity and diversity each other and using each other for clicks or for free promotion. And in the meantime, the fans are forgotten. And now we have the rumors about the X-Men. And now we have the Doctor Who argument all over again. If you're new to my channel, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, and I chronicled pretty well how I felt about the gender swap of the Doctor and how it didn't work and how it's inherently sexist. And if Marvel does this exclusive, Marvel Studios considering making Professor X and Magneto POC in X-Men reboot. I really don't like the term POC. For one, it feels regressive in my opinion. And again, they stop being the characters once you change them fundamentally. Marvel has plenty of characters in their catalog that are POC that they can turn from Z-list characters into A-list characters. Blade is a great example. Iron Man is a great example from a D-list to an A-list. But this is how the game is played. You race and gender swap a character, fundamentally changing the character, selling out your fan base, but getting a bunch of free publicity from the Access Media and the BBC and Hollywood, and people at Disney Marvel will break their arms patting themselves on the back because if anybody criticizes this, then you're an istophobe. Well, if it wasn't for those pesky YouTubers, I have currently a running internet connection. I can still form some coherent sentences, so I am going to have an opinion on this. But let me bring in a couple of other YouTubers who have an opinion I agree with.
This is why they will step all over your legacy, even if it means elevating themselves. Remember, I'm always talking about random race changes of pre-established like white characters or non-black characters. They give you the sloppy seconds to say, look, diversity, while crapping on or simply refusing to utilize original black characters that already exist.
I'm sorry. It's too late to go back and turn them into black folks. You should have did that 50 years ago. This is ridiculous. And I'm offended because they are passing us black folks sloppy seconds. I don't want no sloppy seconds. Make an original character or use one of the characters that are black in your catalog of Marvel characters and make a movie.
Now, I don't know where this rumor came from, but I certainly think it might be Disney Marvel running it up the flagpole to see who salutes, and it gets them some more free press. But to show you how crazy things have gotten, when those of us who are trying to be logical and say, hey, we want to keep giving you money, but could you just create some organic diversity? Well, people like the Mary Sue say organic diversity is a term that I feel has been weaponized. And let's not forget that they're race swapping a character who is a Jewish Holocaust survivor. And you could easily explain why he hasn't aged. It could be part of his mutation. But they don't want to do that because they want a virtue signal. So let's get to Black Widow. What has this got to do with Black Widow? Well, a lot like female Thor, turns out Black Widow needs a man after all, because it looks like Robert Downey Jr. will be returning as Tony Stark in Black Widow, the obligation film that is Black Widow, while Disney Marvel has been playing the Access Media perfectly as a PR wing and as free advertisement. They are now seeing the double-edged sword that they are because you cannot satisfy them. And it's forcing them to spend millions of dollars on a movie they know will not be as successful as previous Marvel films. And I'm sticking by that. If there wasn't a bunch of criticism from the Access Media, I do not think we'd be getting a Black Widow film, especially since she's died. Another problem with the Access Media is they just copy and paste articles from each other. Now, this is originally from Deadline that Screen Rant added some fluff to. In a report from Deadline covering the Saturn Awards, it's mentioned that Robert Downey Jr. will reprise his role as Tony Stark / Iron Man for Black Widow, releasing in May 2020. previously, this news circulated as rumor given how Black Widow's setting can allow for multiple cameos and appearances from other MCU characters, but this appears to be the first time any mention of Downey Jr.'s return has appeared outside of pure speculation. Again, there are so many problems with this film. Number one, it should be rated R. Number two, Scarlett Johansson certainly deserves a film. It should have been out in phase 1 or phase 2, but that time has passed because, again, her character has died. So you're going to get very similar results as you got with Solo. People just aren't interested in seeing dead characters. I think a lot of people, at least in these parts, are done with prequels. And then Robert Downey Jr. coming back and undoing his great work in the last 10 years in the MCU and really undercutting his sacrifice in Endgame. Yes, he's coming back in a prequel, but it seems like a cheap move to help save a movie. It's been in production for a while, and we know there's a very inexperienced director taking on this film, and I'm guessing there was some test footage and they needed to bring in a familiar face. Get woke, go broke. I'll say it again, this film certainly looks like more of an obligation than anything they wanted to do, or they would have done it sooner. So I personally don't have a problem with any female characters or any characters who are gay or people of color, as long as they are organic, and there are plenty of characters within the MCU to draw on for that. But it certainly looks like this phase is to appease the access media, the NPCs and the SJWs who have been bitching about Marvel not being whatever enough, not being enough for them. Well, it will never be enough for them, but it was enough for your hardcore fan base who you have now alienated. What are the Fantastic Four going to look like? Are the X-Men even going to be called the X-Men? Is Thor going to be a star in his own film? Black Widow needs Robert Downey Jr. to come back, and it just cheapens everything he did before. You see what you're doing, Disney Marvel? You're undoing what Marvel had created over decades, what you paid billions of dollars for, and what fans want to continue giving you money for. You don't have to put in all this agenda. Use what characters you have, and you will just continue printing money. But if you do what I think you're going to do to the X-People or the mutants and the Fantastic Four, well, then it was a good run. We really enjoyed it up until Endgame. And, well, then I'll be done with you because I'm really over it. I am tired of what you're doing. I'm done with you in the comics, and I'm probably going to be done with you in the MCU. And I have been a lifelong fan. Marvel Comics were my favorite thing. They're the reason I bought a comic store. They're the reason I'm a nerd. But there's other things to go off to now, other things to enjoy, and I certainly am not going to give Disney any more money until they start respecting the fan.
Nerderotic.com. Please subscribe.